Hi, I'm Cindy Halpern, and I saw Woman in Gold yesterday in Huntington, New York. The movie's very relevant to my family history because my mom was a Viennese Jew, and she lived through the same things that the woman in the film did. My mother's family was not wealthy like the family depicted in the movie, but what my mom was cheated of was a good education. My mom's parents and the other kids were born in Bukovina, but during World War I they moved to Vienna while my grandfather served the Austrian army, because at that point that part of Bukovina was being penetrated by the Russians, and Jews knew they wouldn't do well under the Russians. They needed to stay under Austrian rule, so they moved to Vienna. My mom was born in Vienna September 16, 1921, so she was strictly Viennese. And for whatever reason, my grandfather saw that my mom was very intelligent and that she should, unlike the other kids, after 13 continue on with her education, and Mom had aspirations to be a medical doctor. She was very good at chemistry and physics, especially, and she was very good in languages. So she went to private schools. Of course, in Vienna, they were segregated. She still only went to school with girls. That was the practice of the time. But nevertheless, she went to private school, and she was actually in what we would call the 11th grade, probably, when the Nazis marched into Vienna on March 13, 1938, and Mom was promptly kicked out of school, just like all the other Jews were. So Mom was deprived of that education. She would go on later, when she was interned in Oswego, to go to Oswego, New York University, but the problem was that she was only there a year and a half, and she did study chemistry and physics, but she couldn't go on from there. They had to go to Rhode Island, where she had a sponsor, and she had to work until she married my dad. So that was taken away from her education. Of course, being Viennese, my mom loved the opera, and the whole cultural aspect was taken away from her. Who she was as a person, a Viennese Jew, was robbed. And of course she could have died had they not gone into Italy in time, because they were on the run in Italy for 5 years before they came to the United States, where she was interned for a year and a half, as I mentioned before. But I've been to Vienna 4 times. First time I went with my mom and Uncle Abe. Uncle Abe was a survivor, Dachau and Buchenwald. And I went the second time with Uncle Abe, my sister Anita. The third time I went with my daughter Robin, and the fourth time I went by myself. And so the places they show in the film, the Soccer Hotel, Robin and I actually stayed there, Mom and I, and my Uncle Abe stayed in the Soccer Hotel, so of course that was a place we knew. And the Riesenrad, which is the Ferris wheel at the Prater Amusement Park, of course I've been on that, and I have a miniature Riesenrad actually here. And just the State Opera House and Schönbrunn Palace and the Belvedere and all these sights and sounds of Vienna, I was there, and I guess it's so vivid for me to see these places again, and in the context of this woman's story where everything was taken from her. They had to run for their lives. Her parents were murdered in the Holocaust, and everything was just taken from her. So it's a movie worth seeing. Her story has subtle points that are made that, you know, they might be missed on you, but they're Viennese characteristics of trying to, well, being a little outspoken, but in a subtle kind of way. That's a Viennese thing. You don't directly insult someone. You do it in a subtle, clever way, and that's a Viennese trait. So if you don't know that, you wouldn't be able to pick that up in the film, but that shows that many times. Just the family dynamics are there. And it shows that in the film, the dynamics with the woman and her late aunt, extended families were very important in Jewish Viennese families. My mother, they had her grandparents, Hannah and Fiberish Corner. They were the Hasidic Jews, and they lived with my mom and her parents and siblings until they ended up in the Jewish home for the aged. So even though my mom was Viennese, she was quite, modern because she was Viennese, and she wasn't like her Bukovina Hasidic grandparents. Mom was never like that. Mom never covered hair. Actually, my grandmother, my grandfather's wife, obviously, they didn't follow Hasidic, and I don't think my grandmother ever covered her hair, ever. I just don't think so. I think once they came to Vienna, those practices were dropped, and even though they spoke Yiddish to the grandparents, my mother's main language was German, of course. Of course, she learned French, because in Europe they learn many languages, and of course she learned Greek and Latin, and she knew the Hebrew from her father, who was a Hebrew teacher, and the Yiddish because of her grandparents, and so my mom knew many languages. But my mother became the modern woman she was because she was Viennese and not from Bukovina, and she didn't have the old ways, and Vienna is a part of my family heritage, part of my memory of my mom, who passed 2 years ago. So this movie is extremely important to me, and I would encourage everybody to go see it and really take it in and listen to the message there. So I hope you will go see it.